Hello everyone, this is Butterfly Milkshakes, and this is the newest episode of How to Art. If you like this series, feel free to press the like button below. If you would like to see more content, please subscribe, and if there's anything you would like for me to cover in terms of artwork or in terms of the story that I'm sharing, please comment down below, and I will get to you soon. I do want to put out a disclaimer that this is one of the more negative views that I've had about my experience. Of course, things aren't as black and white. They're a lot more gray with these things. I also do want to throw in there that if you were to ask me about this at, different points of time, I'd probably have different points of view. Like this one was more of a negative view, but I could also paint it up to be a hero emerging story, like from the ashes, a phoenix was born sort of story. So this has many different facets, many different aspects to it. So I want to apologize if it seems like it's this one thing. It's definitely not this one thing. This is a portion of the experience that I had, a certain facet. Like, for example, even though it sounds like I was alone for a very long time in college, in reality, I felt alone. There were people around me who did care about me, even before I became an RA. I just needed to acknowledge them, and I couldn't do that at the time. I didn't really know how to acknowledge people like that. I'm not sure if I'll touch on this topic specifically again in the future, unless someone would want me to, and to kind of go into more detail, kind of like picking apart this piece of my life. I would very much love to do that, to go into all the nitty-gritty details of how I remember it and how things actually were. But in the meantime, I do want to encourage you all to, face your fears, face whatever hardships that you're having at the moment, and to not do it alone. Sometimes you are alone, sometimes you're not as alone as you think you are, but there is really a benefit to reaching out to people, whether it be family members or friends, or people, I guess even strangers sometimes. You could find a stranger and click with them immediately. But there are different ways to help yourself. On the last episode of How to Art, I touched on my high school experience, drawing whenever I could in class, and how I felt like it was the peak of my art journey, so to say. In this current episode, I will be diving into my time in college. So this is somewhat of a reflection from my freshman year to a little bit of now as well. So in the last episode, I mentioned how I went into college picking a biology major, specifically in environmental science. And that was mostly because I was concerned about making good money once I graduated. And another reason why I chose this major so quickly in my first semester was because one of the professors who I met, actually before I went to the school, kind of convinced me to choose that major as soon as possible, which it's kind of funny looking back now how much influence professors can have over new students, so to say. Going in, I had this plan to basically take all the necessary classes that applied to all majors before choosing my major, which is actually something that my mom told me to do, just in case the major that I picked was not the best one for me and I didn't waste all that time. But going into college, I really wanted to exercise my level of independence and my critical thinking, so I listened to my professor and decided to change my major to biology, which is something I've stuck with all this time. In the beginning, there was a lot of hardship taking those classes. I liked biology, but college level biology is a lot different than high school level and elementary, middle school level biology. There's more books, more reading, more chemistry, more how things work, opposed to, I guess, just learning and exploring itself. In the lab is when we did mostly the exploring part. And even that wasn't as exploratory as I liked for it to be. However, despite all of this, I was very determined to find a balance with all the different classes I had and to still keep art and writing. I'll include writing as well because I am an author, and that's something that I wanted to keep doing from high school till now as well. So I wanted to find a balance with everything. Unfortunately, that was thrown off when COVID hit. I went into college in the fall of 2019, and I had to go back home in the spring of 2020 because of COVID. That was also the semester where I took Chemistry 1 for the first time, which will be very important as I continue talking about this. And everyone moved to online learning, basically. During this time, I realized that chemistry was not my strong suit. I failed Chemistry 1 and had to retake it later on. And with everything going on, going back to school physically that following semester, as well as experiencing like more hardships such as failing Chem 2, it just all kind of started piling on one after the other, which I'm kind of getting ahead of myself here, but I just wanted to kind of set the tone for how everything devolved before it became better. So COVID was the first thing, failing chemistry was another thing, because I really tied my self-worth to my grades. I thought that if I got bad grades or failed a class, that meant I failed. So that did not help my self-esteem at all. As I went through more classes, I finally was able to pass Chem 1, and I was still taking more basic classes, so it wasn't like I had all science classes, but I believe the last semester of my sophomore year was when it was all science classes, and to make things worse, I was taking 16 credits at the time. So not only was I taking all science classes, I was also taking Chem 2, and I was not able to keep up with the work that was given to me from that class. So unfortunately, I had to withdraw, but during that time, during that semester, one of the things that I really hated about that semester was that it seemed like no one saw how much I was struggling, and I also struggled to really reach out for help, too. Like, I hated asking people for help, so I was self-sabotaging myself, and sometimes when my fears did leak out, I didn't really have anyone telling me that, hey, maybe you're on the wrong path. In fact, I've actually had someone, well, my now advisor, the professor who convinced me to, take on this major, he basically said, if you weren't supposed to be in this major, you wouldn't have passed Bio 1 or Bio 2. That is not a foolproof piece of advice. I went into college knowing that biology was not all that I wanted to do. I think I lied to myself or had a very incorrect view of myself at that time. I thought that I had to choose one thing, and that if I changed, then that would make me a failure. So, as you can see, it was as if I had no way out with myself and with others, seemingly. Which brings me to the breaking point. which is all these science classes, a class that I hated and did not seem to serve me the best. And this was also a time that I was so focused on passing those classes that I hardly drew or wrote anything. And to this day, if that happens to me now, I tend to feel the way that I did in that semester, which was being very numb and feeling like a part of me had died. So whenever I don't go or don't draw or write as much, I feel like a part of me is dying inside. And that's kind of the same way with everything that I'm interested in as well. But those two things, those major two things, especially art, not having it made me feel like I was dying inside. And I think I did, in a sense, develop a bit of what they call situational depression. I did feel numb. Like, there was a time or a day where it was just raining outside, and I don't even think I had an umbrella. I literally walked from my dorm to our university park, which is about a 15-minute walk. And I thought to myself, if I just keep walking, I don't think a single person would care or ask where I went. They would probably just mark me absent for however long I was gone. I was very bitter. Very, very bitter. Still kind of am. It's more of like acknowledging that maybe that people lie. People have good intentions, but don't really acknowledge their humanness in it. I did withdraw from that class, and honestly, when I withdrew, it was as if a whole weight off my chest was just lifted. And I decided to take a semester to just kind of explore who I was again. This is tied to identity quite a bit, because I felt like a part of my identity had died, that it was gone forever, or that I would never have it ever again. The beginning of my junior year was when I started taking art classes, some dance classes, and acting class, because I really did need to find myself again. And I also started going to therapy. I actually went to counseling therapy when I first got here for social anxiety, but this time it was going to be for being depressed, and apparently I had a lot of low self-esteem, if you couldn't tell from what I said, from the things I said earlier. So there was a lot of self-esteem issues going on. So having the best counselor ever, she was honestly the best counselor I've ever had, that helped a lot. I was able to talk about more than just how I felt about art and writing. I was also very lonely here. I had a good amount of friends in residential life and housing, but in my major, people don't really talk to each other. Like, you could literally be in a group with 3 people and talk to them about basically their life, and then the next semester you wave to them in the hallway and they don't wave back. They pretend as if you never talked to them, which I've kind of been guilty of that too. I didn't start off that way. I just kind of adapted. But yeah, I was struggling with loneliness as well, which that was remedied a lot by being an RA that year. I was an RA during my junior year, and the team that I had was so supportive and so loving that I felt like that there were people who were trustworthy to an extent, or like there were people who genuinely saw me and didn't pretend that they did or said that they did without action. Furthermore, I was exposed to a different community within the other classes I was taking. So, funny enough, now that I'm coming to the end of my time here, I've realized that I have a lot more non-science major friends than science major friends. And unfortunately, the science major friends that I did have, most of them are gone. So that's kind of sad. But I was able to have art friends and theater friends who have been able to see the goodness in my life. I've been able to see the goodness in their lives, and we support each other. We care about each other. So that's been really great. So in a sense, having personal healing has, in a way, healed my relationship with art. It made me realize just how much I needed it and how I needed to be honest with myself. Even now, it's kind of hard to be honest sometimes. Talking to, like, let's say my family or people who don't know that, or like what being an artist looks like, that I'm genuinely serious about doing it. Because not a whole lot of people say it, you know? Like, most people who jump into art, it's kind of like art and then a side job, which there's nothing wrong with that at all. In fact, that's probably what I'll be doing for the rest of my life. But I've been able to be a lot more honest with myself, with how I feel, with what I think, with who I am. And yeah, I'm still in this major that I chose on a whim, because to some degree, even though it's not something I think I should have been part of, it does serve a purpose. Like, I'm still interested in environmental science. But in terms of career and classes that I took, I don't think it was really worth it. Which is why I'm choosing to change everything in the future.